I had to be all right with an older studio owner just touching me how he wanted because, well, these studios are still in business. I guess they're doing something right. I just got to get along to fit in.
Welcome back to On the Horizon. This is Melrose Michaels. I am your host, and I'm here to share what's worked for me in building my adult creator business to try to make building yours just a little bit easier. Let's get into today's episode. Today's guest is the kind of performer people think they know just from watching, but you don't get to see the real story solely by watching what they make on camera. Our guest today, Angel Rivera, is an award-winning performer and has done so much in the industry already. There's a lot that we're going to talk about today, many things of which are the downsides of the adult industry. It's going to touch on some things that maybe are stigmatized in the adult space, things we don't really like to talk about because there are so many positives to the work we do, but there's also so many cons or negatives that can come along with it if you're ill prepared or simply aren't around the right people. That all being said, as I introduce today's guest, I want to encourage everyone listening to request to come up and speak towards the end of this space if you have any questions or anything you want to add or contribute. Now, at 28 years old, Angel Rivera spent the last 7 years in porn, built an award-winning career, and survived every industry red flag that you can imagine, from burnout to exploitation to being told that they didn't even own their own name. What we are talking about today isn't just sex work, it's survival and strategy and what happens when the industry uses you up and you decide to take back your power anyway. This one is for every creator who has ever been undervalued, overworked, and told to smile through it. Angel, welcome. Thank you so much for doing today's space with us.
Thank you very much for having me.
I'm really excited to kind of get into your story, especially for the creators that are listening who maybe aren't as familiar with you. So, you've been kind of in this industry for several years now, and I know that that didn't happen by accident. So, for folks who are meeting you for the first time, can you share a little bit about how you got started in sex work and kind of what that path looked like early on?
Yeah, it sounds lame, but I kind of just applied. I was burnt out of college and I applied to Helix Studios. They flew me out for a weekend, and that weekend they signed me to a years-long contract. So I was kind of just learning as I went, to be honest.
That's the rarest way almost I feel like people get into adult or
Yeah.
they just kind of apply and find their place. When you were new, there's kind of this gap between what you expect and what actually happens. So looking back, is there anything that stands out to you about like those early days of the industry? Like what surprised you most about this work when you were finally inside of it?
Yeah, I mean, I had my fun, but looking back, I feel like I was sold like a loan rent version of Hollywood, so to speak, not to shit on the sex work community at all, but I was told I was going to be able to do all these things, and it just wasn't what I thought it was. And that's why I want to do this, to kind of put that message out there for anybody thinking, "Oh, I'll just get into the industry and it'll be fun." If you don't deal with your traumas beforehand, they're going to deal with you.
Yeah, I think that's really wise advice because when you get into adult work, especially like I got into the industry through webcam personally, so it was very close interactivity with an audience and with a fan base or developing a fan base. And one of the things that stood out to me was like I started around 22, and when I started, I had a pretty well developed like integrity in my own voice, especially as a woman. That can be really hard to be like, no, I'm not doing that, or no, I'm not interested, especially when people are throwing money at you. So I think when you mention like not dealing with your traumas, like that kind of stands out to me because if I didn't kind of deal with my need to please everyone or this like societal weight I carried as a woman to like fit in and be polite and be proper and appease people, like that would have done me huge detriment in adult, and I had to really overcome those things very quickly. So I think this space is going to be super powerful because we don't often get into the conversations around trauma in adult, and because we don't want to like spotlight this as the only thing that comes with adult industry work, and it's just a component that it can be a part of it. So I'm excited to kind of get into this. So when you got into adults, and what happens often to a lot of us, especially as newbies, the industry kind of tries to brand you before we've even figured out like who we are, and you start to notice that certain parts of you people want to own, or they want to monetize, or they want to mold you into whatever they're projecting onto you. So when did you start realizing that like your name and your body or your content weren't necessarily being treated like they were yours?
Thank you so much for your input. I didn't know that about you, but it's comforting to know that, we're not the only ones dealing with this issue. But to be honest with you, I kind of knew I was a piece of meat 3 months in. I started trading spank scenes for an ounce of weed. I don't know if I can say that here, but
Of
when
course,
you
yeah.
when you start just doing things for like a few $100, $1,000 or whatever, you're right. It becomes this thing of like you don't want to talk about the dark side of it because you're supposed to sell. That's what your job is. You're supposed to sell and, be interesting, not be traumatic or any of that. But I would say honestly, 3 months in, I kind of knew like, oh, I'm way in over my head. And I had to learn how to bottom properly. I had to learn how to bend over and get spanked when I was told. I had to be all right with an older studio owner just touching me how he wanted because I can't even say it. But at the time, I was just thinking, well, this is how you get paid. So get through it and smile, just like you said.
It's so scary to think about that experience because when we share experiences as an adult, it's often a shared experience, even though only one person might be saying it or saying it publicly. So when you hear about stories like that or instances like that, you know that they're happening elsewhere and that other people are suffering. And I think with this era that we're in, with this like OnlyFans and fan site boom in the industry, especially coming out of COVID, where we have all these new creators getting into the space, I don't think they're nearly as aware of things like that have happened industry wise, like the old school studios that were getting away with things like that, or the almost the gatekeeping where you had to go through a studio in the early days of adult to kind of make a name for yourself. It wasn't the way it is now with like this lower barrier of entry. So it's really hard to say no to something because you also don't know it. Like it seems like that's normal. Like it seems like that's the way it is, especially when you don't have a lot of exposure to other things.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're right. It seems normal and it becomes it was this thing of like, well, these studios are still in business, so they might I guess they're doing something right. I just got to get along to fit in. But that barrier difference of like, oh, I can just get in and make content. That's one way of getting into the industry. And if that's how you're gonna make your money, that's how you make your money. But for us older studio heads, yeah, it almost becomes this thing of like you're just put in positions and you're either gonna sink or swim. So be interesting and don't be negative, but at the same time when you go home and you're done with your scenes, you're kind of like, what did I just do? What did I, you know? And I I essentially I essentially let them run it because there was like 6 months to a year of them being like, you know what, you can't have an OnlyFans. This thing is coming out, but you're signed as Angel Rivera to our studio, so you can't have an outside source of income. And when I saw that and what they were telling other models at my studio, I was like, oh, really? Like, and I never believed them. I was just like, oh, this is a good way to make people think like you're mine, you're stuck here, and it is what it is. We're going to put your name out there in your scenes. You have no control over your name and your voice and what you think.
That's wild to think about. And I think I've heard similar stories with creators that were in performers that were in studios when OnlyFans kind of came onto the scene. Can you kind of give me the story about owning your name? Because I think that's a good segue. there's, a lot of there's even companies I've worked with that when you work with them, they kind of try to overtake your brand. Like for a while, I was Dakota James with this company, which I won't name, but they had the Instagram for it. They provided the Instagram, they provided the Twitter for it. And I was meant to post and like market myself for their company on these giant, really grown big accounts. And at the same time, they wouldn't let me be Melrose Michaels, even though I was already established. I was still going by their screen name that they owned, or their username that they owned, stage name they owned, because they didn't want me to market myself or grow my own business. It was only under their brand and their name and their persona. So like I relate to you in that aspect. But tell me about the name thing, because I want people to understand what that can look like when someone tries to exert control in that way over a creator.
Well, when they told me that I couldn't do this or that, it wasn't specifically about the name, which funny enough, they gave me the name Angel Rivera. I was not even thinking that at all. But yeah, it started with that, and then it was telling me that I couldn't, pursue my OnlyFans, I couldn't make certain content if I wasn't at the studio. And after a while, at the end of my contract, I was left unsigned for a few months, and I had come to the studio heads and I was like, "Hey, I would really like a raise for the fandom I'm bringing in or whatever." And they were like, "Okay, we'll give you $100 raise." And I was like, "Well, I want about 6 or 7 because I can see how this thing works and I can see how, we're making you guys money. All we have to do is ask for it." And what they were saying is like, well, you won't get 1,700 from any studio aside from us. Go try it. And then all you have to do is just hit up another studio, put yourself out there. And that's when I started taking my name back. I had done Guys in Sweatpants and then did some other scenes, but I was really learning as I went. And I just it baffles me how some studios try to exert that control, and when I saw how much control they were trying to exert, I just knew like, well, you know what, this isn't the make all break all. This is just what got you into the industry. This is now how you start being Angel, and I had to learn how to market myself, reach out to studios. I never had a manager or any of that stuff. I was just learning on the fly. So a lot of it I don't regret. It was just a learning curve.
If you're enjoying this podcast episode so far, please take one moment to share it with another one of your adult content creator friends, because you know what the rule is here. We do not gatekeep, and we want to make as many adult creators' businesses as easy as possible. And you sharing this episode with them might do exactly that. Thanks so much in advance.
How scary is that? Like, because when I've come from situations where I didn't have any know-how, or when I wasn't well versed in how to go about certain things, like how I imagine if you're with a studio and things have mostly been provided to you or set up on your behalf to begin with, and now you have to venture out into doing this yourself, like how scary is that? Because I know so many performers and creators just don't make that leap out of fear. Like they're just afraid that they won't be able to make it on their own, but more often than not, they're better off for having done it. So, how did you, handle this, like just the fear of doing that? And also, is there any advice you would give to creators that are kind of considering making that switch?
Um, I guess I just handled it head on. Not to say it was great in any way, but uh, I'm cutting out a backstory. So when I dropped out of school, I was going to school for mass communications and marketing. So I already kind of knew I could jump into this, get myself a name, and then go from there. When I got into the industry though, it was a lot faster than I expected. But going in, I kind of knew what I was going to do, but the way that the old school studios move was kind of crazy, and I had to learn how to have self-respect for myself. And you know what? I got in this industry to sell myself, not necessarily for you guys to run my account. So I just had to deal with it head on, but I had some level of training for mass comm and communications, advertising too.
Okay, so you had a little bit under your belt of like where to pivot and what to try. That's super, super useful. It's easy, I think, to often assume that when kind of the money improves or when you get yourself into a better situation, that the treatment will improve as well. Was that your experience?
Um, For sure. It definitely gave me power over my sexuality, I would say. But it got to a point where, and I hate saying this because I don't want to sound self-conceited or whatever, but when the money improved, my attitude changed. And my attitude didn't necessarily change for the better. I was somebody that really kind of got full of myself after a while. And when the money improved, my habits didn't get better. It just gave me more money to almost self-destruct, and that's what it became me trying to maneuver, well, how do I get out there and sell myself and become interesting? And then when the doors closed, I kind of went home and had to deal with what I had just done or what I thought of myself, like taking filming with people I didn't even really want to film with, or getting spanked by some dude that I didn't want to get spanked by. But when the money improved, it made it a little bit better for my lifestyle. But with how extreme my mind can be, I got to some really dark places really fast, and the money didn't necessarily make it better.
So, are you open to talking a little bit about that part of things? Because I think that that's a kind of like a misunderstanding amongst people with success in general. Like it's easy to look at someone who has a lot of success or who has a perception that they're successful and to think that like their life is all peaches and cream. Like so they're so set, but no one really understands what's going on behind closed doors. So if you're open to talking about that, I would love to expand there more.
Yeah, I mean, well, when I got into the industry, I mean, I was already smoking and dealing with my traumas, whatever, but after a while, I just took it out all on myself, the bad contracts and the getting so high after a scene. And at first it was kind of celebratory, but then it became this thing of like, oh, you're not dealing with stuff. You're just burnt out. And after a while, my habits went from recreational marijuana to a lot deeper and darker things. You can ask by all means, but I I just kind of went off the deep end. I had won awards in different places. I had moved across the country. I had a porn star ex-boyfriend that I was in love with, but he didn't love me back. I was kind of all dealing with all of that stuff at once. So it became, oh, okay, well, I'll just get high and I'll be fine. And then a few years later, that's not working anymore. And you gotta keep working, right? So the scene rates were fine, but my access to the way I dealt with my traumas, it was almost kind of like I lost myself, and I just started becoming this darker person, and I started viewing the world really negatively, and that took an effect on me, and that took an effect on my work, that took effect on my business relationships. And it was really early on. My first award that I won with Helix, I didn't even want it. I knew I didn't want it because I left the award behind, and my friend had to bring it home for me. Like I literally left it at the event, and I didn't even care.
Wow, that's so wild to think about. Did what are like, I guess, some of the red flags that kind of started to bring to you top of mind for you that this wasn't going to be sustainable for you anymore? Because we, as an industry, we talk about burnout a lot and we cope with burnout, but oftentimes, at least in the conversations I've had on my channel specifically, it's very much geared towards just work burnout. Like how do I make this more manageable from an admin standpoint or from a filming standpoint? We don't often get too into the like personal life burnout or the like physical demand burnout. So in terms of like what you were going through and how much turmoil and like grief and frustration and everything you had going on personally, were there any red flags that told you like, okay, this has to change, like this is not going to be sustainable?
Yeah, I totally I hate putting my name on this like that, but I was showing up to my scenes high. I didn't care who I was filming with as long as I got, a scene in. And it got to a point where after a little bit into my fentanyl addiction, I started using Trimex to just get up and go down. And it became this lifestyle of like, okay, well, you got to shoot yourself so you can make, a few bucks, when originally when I got into the industry, I was very confident sexually, at least topping. But then when my impotency kicked in, I was really like, okay, you have burned out. The whole reason you got in the industry, just dealing with being sad. And like I said, it wasn't one thing, it was a collection of things. But over a few years, I just, any fleshlight event, any award show, any big parties, I was the highest one in the room. And I had a lot of friends like tell me like, "Hey, are you all right? Are you all right? Are you all right?" And for a while I was kind of like annoyed, like, why are you even asking me? But looking back, I can see like I wasn't happy and other people could see it. So there were red flags all throughout my career, but just like you said, we don't usually talk about the life burnout. By the time I jumped into porn, I was already burnt out. I was in college for 4 years, not graduated. My parents were, talking about money and me failing a class and whatever. And it just became this thing of like, all right, well, I have this number in my pocket. I've talked to this guy before. I'm 21 now. Maybe this is what I should try. And my life burnout was already there, leaving the award behind, and now a few years in, I'm already totally burnt out of, like you said, the filming, the angles, the editing, the reaching out to people, and then showing up high on top of it just to get through that. I could kind of see like, all right, this isn't sustainable, and you've really got to work on yourself. And I'm just now getting to that point where I work on myself. I'm just now to that point where I do what I want to do.
I think that's such a beautiful thing and vulnerable thing to even share because like I'm in a place where I'm really into working on myself. I mean, I've always kind of tried to, but things have become more apparent for me in more recent, I guess this past year, like dealt with a lot of personal stuff, and I'm having to take a look at myself and really figure out like where my trauma was hiding and like be able to go face it and like deal with things up front because it comes out in other areas. And for me, my and like yourself, we're so work focused that that's kind of where it can come out. What was a turning point for you? Like, when did you've recognized these red flags, you had people around you, these supportive people that were trying to kind of help intervene and bring it to your attention. Like, what was the turning point for you?
To be totally honest, I had an overdose about 3 months ago, and I had to really sit and decide what I was going to do with my life. And for this stretch of my career, what I really want to do is I want to do it the healthiest I possibly can be. I don't want to run away anymore. I don't want to escape. If I'm having sex, I should enjoy it. But this industry becomes so hard and heavy that sometimes you're like, oh my God, like, what am I doing? And in that process, like anything, any work, you're not happy with your life and your work, and you burn your bridges. I burnt a lot of bridges, and then it took an overdose for me to really be like, okay, now what are you gonna do? You used to work out all the time. You used to go for runs. You used to, eat better, given it was a lack of options. But I could see how the money and the access and the D-list celebrity, no pun intended, I could see how it affected me in a negative way. And like I said, I had already had a fentanyl addiction, and I'd gotten over that, and I was still using pain pills, and then it took an overdose on the pain pills to really be like, oh my God, what am I doing with my life? I was in an ER room, like hysterically crying because I was like, I don't know what's wrong with me. And I think my brain or my body over 7 years of usage and being burnt really just told me like, you got to focus on yourself. If you don't focus on yourself, you're not going to be here at all. You could work as much as you want. You can film with whoever, but once you film with a few people a few times, you're kind of like, well, I'm just doing the same thing again and again, and I'm not working on myself.
Well, thank you for sharing that. That's super, super just vulnerable and open, and I'm so glad you're okay. It's so scary.
Thank
I've
you.
I've never experienced anything close to that, but I've known close people to me who have lost people. So I'm grateful you're here with us. There's a lot that you've experienced in, I mean, relatively a short time. Like 7 years is not a short time, but for a stretch in our industry, it's actually a fairly long career. They're getting longer now that we have more options like OnlyFans and things like that. But for a studio career, it's a pretty long career. Now that you're kind of in this new era and this new chapter, like what are things like for you now? Like when you go to set, is there a way for you to identify a difference, whether you're being respected on set or whether you're being kind of treated like a prop? And when you identify that difference, is there a way that you know to navigate it?
Well, as for being on set, I haven't filmed with a major studio in a few years. I just started reaching out and putting my name back out there, but I feel like I can see it more now, right? Like I kind of listen to my instincts. I listen to the voice in my head, don't do this, don't do that. I'll kind of just speak it now. And in trying to film with studios, I kind of just tell them, "Hey, this is what I want. This is how I want to be depicted. If you can't do that, then I won't do it." But as for my own personal OnlyFans, since the overdose, I've that's all I do now is I'm not trying to use any drugs, any substances, any alcohol, any poppers, weed, fentanyl, none of that. Like I just do what I want, and day by day it gets better and it gets easier. I feel like the more that you respect yourself for a longer period of time, it accumulates and you really get to see the effects on it. I haven't been this happy in my life ever. So thank you for even saying like you're happy for me to be here. For myself, it was so hard for me to get to that point that I wanted to be here and learning how to be here. And in an industry where it seems like every year it gets more toxic and whether it's interpersonal relationships or whether it's the content or how we are depicted. Yes, I kind of just put out this is how I want to be depicted. If you can't respect that, you don't have to work with me at all.
I love that. I love also too that we're in an era in the industry where we can have that space for ourselves. Like, you don't have to shoot with anyone you don't want to. You can be a solo creator if you really want to these days. You can, do any kind of even like not even explicit. Like you can do some weird oddity on OnlyFans and paint in the nude and like have your own like strange success. And I love that this creator economy is kind of providing that space for people because it's important and it gives you a lot more options than especially in the industry than we had early on. I'm curious, like, how has your relationship now with your work changed? Is there anything noticeable for you that stands out?
Yeah, I'm uh I'm just into it more, Like it used to be, oh, how do I get through this? How do I get through this? Oh, I'm just thinking about me getting paid. That's anytime they were asking for cum shots, I was thinking about my check, quite frankly. Now it's kind of like, oh, I can just work with who I want to work with and I take care of myself now. And it for anybody out there struggling with any addiction issues or anything, quite frankly, any trauma that's left undealt, my only advice to you is just deal with it and respect yourself, learn what you want to do, and once you know what you want to do, act on it. You can't just think that for months and be doing the same thing. Otherwise, you're going to hit a different type of burnout because you already know what you're supposed to do and you're not doing it. You're not acting on it. And like you said earlier, a lot of it's out of fear, whether it's changing studios, changing up your act. I have friends that, they lose weight and that's a different issue. Like, I think in general, we just have to take care of ourselves, and once you start taking care of yourselves, you're gonna feel a lot more passionate about your work. And now when I'm editing videos, I'm not like, oh, I can't believe this. I got to edit around that. Most of it's fine because it's not filled with all the extracurricular activities. It's all energy based. And once you get to a place where it's good energy, it kind of just seeps back into you. If you're going to your scenes negative and needing to get high or thinking about this or that and not really being in the moment, then you're just adding to the trauma, and it all you're doing is messing with your own brain.
How much of this work do you consider to be mental, like of adult industry work personally? Because we've talked a lot about, being in a good place and making sure you protect your energy. And it makes me wonder for you personally, how much do you think the adult work is also mental?
About 50-50, quite frankly. I I don't want to be easy or whatever, or be the dude that's always talking about, feel good, you look good, whatever. I just, my mind can be very extreme, and I got to a point where I was like, these fans, they see me jack off, they say they love me, whatever, but at the end of the day, I felt like nobody loved me. And that's why I took it out all on myself. And I just started to love myself. And for anybody listening, that's all I want for you is just love yourself, and you get what you get. But once it becomes this rat race of likes and insights and how much money are they making? Oh, I didn't make the same as last month. Oh, what am I doing different? It becomes this freaking mind game. And for some people, they're a lot more mentally strong than I am. But I am a person that really needs to walk myself off a ledge constantly. And all I can say is, yeah, for me, it's 50-50. Half of it's the body, the eating right, the looking good, going to sleep early. Another half is getting to know yourself, and eventually respecting yourself and being okay with yourself. And at the end of it, you might just love yourself.
That's so well said. That's so well said. If there's advice that you could give creators out there, first a new creator and then second a veteran creator, what would those two pieces of advice be?
A new creator, I guess, in this new age of porn, if you can make it without a studio, by all means, make it without a studio, because you're not even going to have to be put in those situations. For older creators, I feel like asking them, why did you get into the industry in the first place? And act on that. Was it good? Was it bad? Did you feel confident? Whatever it was, for me, it was good. So I can kind of go back to that and be like, all right, well, all you got to do is be healthier and take care of yourself. But for people that got into it from a bad situation, if this is your life and you're really happy with it, then by all means, be happy. But just in one way or another, just make sure you're respecting yourself, and you're not becoming a toxic. For me, I felt like I was a toxic banner just walking around, and it got to a point where no studios wanted to work with me. It got to a point where I'm doing a fentanyl lean at an award show. It got to a point where, like I said, everybody's coming up to you. As long as you're maintaining good health mentally and physically, then I think you can pick and choose why this industry works for you, and really just believe yourself.
That's excellent advice. When you were saying that, I was thinking because I've been in the industry about 13 years now, and starting out in webcam, I remember like I'll never forget the first week in the industry. Like I hadn't met anyone. It was all, webcam from my house by myself, me and the 10 people in my chat room or whatever for the first couple days when I'm getting my feet wet. But I remember how exciting it was. Like I remember being so excited that I could just turn on a camera and hang out with these people online, and they were paying me for it, which didn't even make sense and like wasn't plausible in my brain. Like it just seemed too good to be true. And I was kind of holding my breath until my first check came. And back then, the webcam checks came in the mail. And so I got my first check. I was like, oh my God, this fake money in tokens is actual money. Like, this is the greatest thing I've ever found. Like, I can't believe this is real. But I lose sight of that. Like, even today, like, for me to go and like do a webcam event or go live, it's so rare for me to go live because I do mostly content these days, as the case with most creators, I feel. But to like go live and interact live, like It used to be this thing that I was so excited about, and now it's just like, man, that's a time intensive task. Like, 3 to 5 hours online. That's kind of a lot of time. I could film 3 videos in that time, 4 videos in that time, and I'm always like comparing it and subtracting against it and trying to weigh the option. But it's great advice to go back to like remembering why you got started, remembering that those initial emotions and feelings and excitement, like it makes me want to cam again. It's fantastic advice.
Thank you. That's great to hear that it worked for you that way, honestly, because I started off with Chatterbait and feeling like, oh, this is just awkward for me. I'm not a live person. I can't flip that switch like that. I think that's what a lot of the usage came from, was me needing to shut up and smile, even telling myself that. So if it works for you, just go back to that. But I myself, I get that feeling too of like, oh, it's really intense to be live. You gotta be ready for whatever they say, this or that. And like you said, with the whole videos, you're like, I could film 3 videos in the time, or I can hope that somebody's gonna tip me if I'm in a good mood, and relatable and not
Mhm.
depressing.
100%. Yeah, you're always gambling on live cam. Yeah, it's like a $2 a day or a $2,000 a day. You never know what you're gonna get. You essentially moved through, survival and reclaiming your voice, and now you're in this new chapter. What do you think is next for you? Like whether that's creatively or personally or anything else.
I think I want to use it. Oh, I think I want to use my years in the industry to really tap into my creativity. What I loved about the industry is it gave me so much time to really be by myself. And before it was, oh, that gives me time to be high. Now at 28, I'm looking at things like, hey, this industry gives you a lot of time that other people don't have, a lot of good fortune that other people don't have, especially in today's economy. Like, I'm not in any way trying to burn that bridge down. What I am trying to do is, be healthy, live healthier, and hopefully artistically I can spend a few years learning and getting better, and maybe one day I can pivot into whether that be film or music or art. I've kind of dabbled in different things, but I know I didn't spend the time on it. So what I want to do now is just make another healthy run for Angel, put my name out there again, and really just learn. Because when I got in the industry, that's what it was all about. I was learning how things functioned and how things worked and the setting up of stuff. Now it's in a different fold. I guess dealing with all the therapy and stuff. Now it's just like, okay, how can I make my situation the best possible situation? So it could be film, art. I want to buy a camera to learn photography, shoot my own stuff. I I just want to enjoy myself. And it seems like day by day it gets better and I'm just enjoying myself.
Oh, I love that so much. Angel, thank you so much for being here and letting us into kind of the real story behind the scenes, the burnout, the boundaries, and also part of this new chapter with the rebuild. I know that this conversation is going to stay with a lot of people that listen to, live today, but will also listen to the recording on the podcast. Before we close out, can you let everyone who's listening know where they can find you, follow your work, or support what you build next?
For sure. Thank you so much for giving me that opportunity. You can find me here, Angel Rivera XXX on X. You can find me on Instagram at Ricardo Rants. I had to put that in my government name because Twitter or Instagram, I'm sorry, was getting real funny with taking down Angel accounts all the time. On TikTok, Ricardo is Angel. I've got so much stuff coming out, but really, thank you for letting me be here, because all I really wanted to do was lend a helping hand to anybody that's feeling depressed right now and going through it. And not to say necessarily counsel them, but if anybody needs help, just reach out. And I promise you, if you think nobody cares about you, or this industry isn't for you, there's a lot of us that think that, and we go through different phases of our burnout. All you have to do is reach out to a friend.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much, Angel. What you shared today, and I think it's just something every creator needs to hear. I know everyone that's listening also gets caught up in this cycle of like overworking or overgiving or undervaluing themselves because we're all just kind of out here trying to survive. But the truth is, none of our energy is infinite. And also, that energy needs to carry us through our real lives and not just our lives on camera. So to Angel's point, if you are a creator listening today and you want to just join a community of other creators and have additional support, we have a closed community for adult creators only. It's SWCEO It's an app on your phone. It works just like a social media app. It's super easy to get on there, use it, reach out to people. We post tons of things in there from like strategy and business stuff, case studies of what's working, what's not. But the big overarching theme there is that we all in the industry, we can all relate to what we're going through, and we're all super supportive. It's drama free. It's a great place to be and to live and to lean on. So if you're listening, check that out if it's interesting to you. I'll also plug, because this was a sensitive subject for this episode, Pineapple Support. If you're looking for free or low-cost therapy, or if you want someone, their hotline is always available to call as well. So just pulled from these resources we have. And also, like Angel said, you guys always have a friend in us. My DMs are always open as well. And just thank you guys for tuning in today. This was a heavy one, but also one of the most beautiful and vulnerable episodes we've ever had. So thanks again, Angel, and I will see all of you guys in the next one. Thanks, CEO Squad.
It would be absolutely incredible if you rated this podcast 5 stars and left a little review. We want to get this podcast to as many adult creators as possible, and you taking a second to leave a couple stars and a review really helps us do that. Thanks so much.